Call to order the workshop meeting for February 8th, 2025. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, will the clerk please call roll call?
Sure. Mayor Kurzban?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Burrell?
Here.
Commissioner Fender? Let the record reflect that Commissioner Fender is not present. Commissioner Mayfield?
Here.
Commissioner Titicus?
Here.
Are there any comments on non-agenda items? Town Manager?
I'm going to call on our chief to come up and walk us through a PowerPoint on the traffic safety analysis that was completed by the police department. Chief?
Good morning. Sort of the purpose of this presentation is, some data was sent out that, to be honest, if you're unfamiliar with speed studies and traffic data and how things are determined and things of that nature, it might be kind of foreign to you. And so we thought it was best to at least kind of set a groundwork on what do these things mean, how are speed limits set, what is the actual traffic issues that we have in terms of crashes, things of that nature in Sewell's Point, so that you kind of have a little bit of a baseline of knowing what's really going on and how these things are determined before kind of deciding what or if you'd like to do going forward. So what we did was way back in the last quarter of 2024, in response to complaints about speeding on North Sewell's Point Road, I did request a speed study be done by the county. There were some delays due to, we had a hurricane, that kind of stuff. And then we also requested one on South Sewell's Point Road. The purpose on the police department side when we request these things, which is not in itself inherently unusual, is that number one, we want to know, do we have a speeding problem? Yes or no. And if we do have vehicles that are speeding, are they during a day, time period that is specific? And at least then we can provide some efficiency in terms of how we go ahead and deploy officers. You don't want to be sitting there from noon to 1 if the vehicles are speeding between 8 and 9. It's just not, we have such limited resources, it's just not prudent. So let's just say we do a speed study and there is no discernible pattern in terms of when people speed. There's a total randomness to it throughout the day, then we continue in the way that we normally routinely enforce speeding.
Let the record reflect that Commissioner Fender has arrived.
Certainly. Fine. So the device that the county uses is something called a stealth stat. And basically what it is it's a box. None of you would have even known it was there. Citizens wouldn't know it's there. It's not the type of thing where somebody sees it and all of a sudden they're slowing down. It's totally innocuous. However, one thing that we would want you to know is that the device itself, maybe I need the mouse. Bob?
Mariah.
Is capturing several points of data. It counts cars, how many, traffic volume, direction of travel for the vehicles, the speed of each vehicle. And then there is software that comes with the device that does calculations of volume, direction, 85th percentile speed, 10 mile an hour pace are all calculated within that data. Now I do want to say in terms of accuracy, police radar is basically in essence almost the same thing. And there is a margin of error and even reported by the manufacturer. So general accuracy will be within 1 mile per hour. However, just like police radar, there are anomalies that can occur. A police officer has to attend a 40-hour class to run radar. And the reason for that is because there are errors in running radar. And if you don't know how to properly interpret what you're seeing on the screen, you can think someone's doing, it may say somebody's doing 112 when in fact they're doing 50. It's that simple. It can batch, it can add other vehicles to it. So there's multiple steps an officer takes during the speed enforcement process from I observed the vehicle, I observed they were speeding, I estimated their speed to be X, I activated my radar unit, and I received a high audio Doppler tone consistent with the speed that was displayed, which is how fast I thought they were going to start with. All of those things happen when an officer runs radar. None of that happens when a box is sitting on a pole. It just tallies that error as a vehicle. So I do want you to be aware of that, that you're going to see some on there. And part of what drew us to that, and I feel like we need to point it out, was when you see 10 vehicles between 9 and 6 on North Sewell's Point Road on a weekday doing 100 miles an hour, it's physically impossible to get to that speed because of the traffic volume that's going on at the same time. So it's just something to consider, which when I spoke to the county about this, he was like, yeah, I should have sent you the reports that accounts for standard deviation because there are expected errors at extremely low and extremely high results. In all fairness, there's one on South Sewell's Point Road that's over 100 miles an hour, a lone vehicle, they were probably doing over 100 miles an hour. That does happen. Okay, my personal best was 116 out on A1A on the 10-cent bridge. There are those lone people who will do that. Okay, and there's not much we can do other than hopefully we're there to capture those folks. So when we look at the data that we get, we're looking at overall results, 85th percentile speed. Are there excessively speeding vehicles, day and time, if there are excessively speeding vehicles, and then we go ahead and target that. If there's not, again, a specific time, then we do what we normally do. And then 2024, our officers do log when they go out to do concerted traffic enforcement efforts, i.e. I'm going to go sit down on the side of the road there and I'm going to run radar for the next 20 minutes, half an hour. They did that 679 times in 2024. I want you to keep in mind there's 7 people in the entire police department, including the lieutenant and I. Okay, they spend a lot of time doing traffic enforcement. In addition to that, every patrol car has a radar unit. And as they're driving down the road, they know how fast the car in front of them is pulling away from them, the car that's approaching them in the opposing lane, and the guy that's coming up behind them. Okay, so basically 360 degrees around that vehicle, they are engaged in traffic enforcement when they're moving down the road. So what do traffic engineers do with the data? There is a science to traffic and motorist behaviors. The regulation of traffic involves the study of complex systems using math models, data analysis to understand traffic flow, how do drivers behave, infrastructure interactions. And the goal is to optimize traffic management, minimize congestion through evidence-based strategies. There are 2 manuals that are referred to for referencing traffic. There's the manual for Uniform Minimum Standards of Design, Construction, and Maintenance for highways and streets, commonly called the Florida Green Book for short, and then the MUTCD, which largely deals a lot with signage, painting, and all of that. Do we have to follow those manuals? Not following the manuals could have some consequences. It could lead to liability, particularly for public agencies responsible for those roads. If we fail to comply with those standards, it can be considered negligence and could result in legal action. If an accident happens due to non-compliant traffic control devices, which is why they're supposed to be a certain height and certain distances back, and determination should be made on where they're supposed to properly go. Additionally, there could be a potential loss of federal funding and tort liability. So it applies to all roads and streets in the United States as part of the federal regulations. That manual is a national standard. That's why they want to make sure if you go from Florida to Georgia, you're driving around in Alaska, you understand the signs. It's not like going to another country where it's totally different. You want them to be consistent. Some of you have probably seen, and I've heard suggestions before in some gated communities where the speed limit is 23 or something like that. According to the manual, we're not supposed to do that. Speed limits are supposed to be posted in increments of 5 miles an hour. And those speed limits should be based on an engineering study and analysis of all of those things. So the number one way in which the speed limits are determined is utilizing what they call the 85th percentile speed. The short version basically is the theory behind that is that 85% of the motorists are going to travel at a speed that's reasonable and prudent for the conditions that are present. Other considerations are crash statistics, extent of bike ped activity, presence of on-street parking, access density, driveways, intersections, what type of area it is, and the presence or absence of adverse alignment, if there are hills, grades, things of that nature. The 85th percentile speed on North Sewell's Point Road is 38 miles per hour. Speed limit's currently posted at 35. So based on those theories, on the 85th percentile speed alone, it is set in the range in which it's supposed to be. South Sewell's Point Road, 36 or 35, depending upon if you're approaching or receding. Again, same as the speed limit. So what does it mean for the town? They appear to be in the range in which the manual say that they should be set. And evidence shows that actual speeds are only reduced by a fraction. Okay, there we go. For every 5 miles an hour, which you lower the speed limit. So under that traffic theory, let's just say argumentatively, if you lowered the speed limit by 10 miles per hour, that would result in a 2 to 4 mile an hour difference. Also, Florida statute, go back please, Bob.
Sorry.
That's okay. Also says that we can only change the speed limit after conducting an investigation, and that would not be an investigation conducted by me. That would actually be, we'd have to hire a traffic engineer to make a determination whether or not that change is reasonable. So something at this point, that's something that hasn't happened because obviously there would be expenses associated with that. So mitigating factors. So we're trying to figure out what conditions do we have here that would justify lowering the speed limit. So I read all the crash reports. Bob?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay, not to take your mouse. So we read all the crash reports for 22 through 24, basically the last 3 years. Without a doubt, the most crashes we have in Sewell's Point is on the State Road A1A corridor, which is not something that anyone's brought up, but if in the future you want to do that, I feel that we can completely, in my mind, justify, based just on crash data alone, reducing that speed limit. And I can tell you that I personally addressed that. It's probably been, 8 to 10 years with the state of Florida in terms of trying to get them to lower that speed limit, because what we see are crashes of folks coming into Sewell's Point, especially in season, where traffic's backed up all the way onto the bridge. Folks who are unfamiliar don't realize when you crest that bridge, traffic's going to be stopped because of the traffic light. That is something I think could totally be justified. In the town of Sewell's Point, we haven't had any crashes involving pedestrians or bicyclists. So over the next 3 years, or over the past 3 years, 58 crashes out on A1A. North of the intersection, so that's every street north of the intersection, not just North Sewell's Point Road, we've had 27 crashes. Same criteria on the south end, not necessarily Sewell's Point Road, the whole south end of town, there were 16 in the last 3 years, and then 15 in the parking lots. Primary causes, again, on A1A, rear end collisions. People drive too close to one another, and then traffic suddenly stopping, and then they run into each other. A shocking number of them that had relatively minor damage, folks just take their foot off the brake and roll right into the guy in front of them, and things of that nature. 9 right-of-way violation collisions, and nearly all of those are folks making the left off of A1A onto North Sewell's Point Road. And one made an illegal U-turn at the intersection and violated the right-of-way of oncoming traffic. Just as a point of reference, I did ask FDOT recently, within the last year. Some of you may have seen at some intersections, there's a flashing yellow arrow instead of a solid green lollipop to make a left. I did ask them if the data involving our intersection would make that a prudent decision to go ahead and change that out. The response that I got back was that our yard arm is insufficient to support the different colored light on there. And we've had 6 side swipe collisions, folks just merging into one another, and 1 wide turn over here making the left hit someone else. On the north end of town, again, 7 rear end collisions, folks not watching traffic, people stopping to make a turn, very similar to A1A, best described probably as distracted driving of some variety. 8 of them have veered off of the roadway and struck various objects. The FedEx guy has been hit a couple times now, taking his mirrors off. The Amazon guy, that's what most of those are, and the occasional mailbox. If you guys aren't aware, if you look on North Sewell's Point Road, when that road was redone, the lanes were narrowed, and we did have problems with a lot of folks veering off the road, coming back on overcorrecting. And you'll notice there's about this wide of a strip of concrete headed northbound on North Sewell's Point Road, and they added that little bit to try and circumvent that. But just so you're aware that sometimes one of the criteria potentially to slow down traffic is to narrow lanes, but there can be adverse consequences to that. And on North Sewell's Point Road, there were adverse consequences to that, which is why they added that extra little bit of asphalt to hopefully try to reduce those crashes. And that was a long time ago, when we redid the road, so. Collisions with overhead objects, unfortunately, especially in the south end, you're gonna see a lot of those. Folks back into things. It's kind of a various sundry of a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We've had in this last year in particular, a couple of crashes involving drunks midday. Those are things that we don't unfortunately have a lot of control over unless we catch those folks while they're driving. And then we had a motorcycle crash where somebody slid in the rain into oncoming traffic. On the south end of town, the number one collision is a truck hitting a tree overhead. Two of them were speed related at South Sewell's Point Road in Mandalay. I would recommend, and I think it certainly is justifiable to reduce the speed limit once you get to Henry Sewell Way to start to slow them down going into that curve headed to High Point. These are one of them was actually somebody, I guess I could call it fleeing from an officer. He had him at 90 miles an hour and change out on A1A. And when the officer hit his lights, the guy headed south. We're not going to chase someone at 90 miles an hour in a residential neighborhood. The officer did continue south without his lights on and found him upside down in Ms. Lucas's yard. And that has happened twice. Okay, so that curve is a mitigating factor. They don't know it's there. They're from out of the area. They come across, they hit the curb on the wrong side of the road, and then end up over there. So I definitely think that consideration needs to be made, some sort of mitigating factor there. Folks back into things. Someone ran into their husband in the driveway. What we call a mailbox homicide. Largely, again, nearly all of those are all relatively minor incidents. 15 parking lot crashes. I don't need to tell you, everybody backs into everybody in the parking lot. And then at Harbor Bay, that poor building's been hit so many times. 2 people have driven into the building. That's not uncommon, unfortunately. So then we get to how can we slow or try to calm traffic? There's a lot more than this. If you go ahead and research online, these are the ones that there might be a chance you could put them here. The other ones require, you couldn't we don't have the real estate anywhere to put a roundabout in, say on South Sewell's Point Road. There's no space there. So these are things that you could certainly consider. First one is a speed hump. Bob? So that's what they may look like. Speed humps, speed tables. The variance comes into kind of the width on the top. Would be probably the easiest way probably to describe that conceptually. It raises the pavement. Next page, please. 3 to 4 inches. They're hopefully gradual, often placed in a series, though. This isn't something that would normally just be set out, one of them just set out in the middle of the way, and there's nothing else with it. If you think about Ocean Breeze, there's a series of 4. There's a series of 4 of them that span the distance. So they're often placed, again, in a series. They can be effective at reducing speeds in that specific spot. It is self-enforcing. No one needs to do that for them because bad things happen if they don't. And they cause drivers at least to think about the roadway as they're driving down there. The cons is that they're noisy. Again, I've been here for a little bit. I remember way back in the day, I probably was sergeant or lieutenant, speaking of traffic engineering at the county about these. They spend a lot of time putting them in and taking them out, almost the number one reason because of noise. Because whoever lives near them doesn't want to hear the thump all day long. So they can be aggravating to motorists. My number one concern, though, is that they are difficult for emergency vehicles. This past year alone, and I apologize that I can't split them between north and south. We're having some software glitchy stuff. But we had 137 medical calls this year and 61 fire calls. So when you consider The fact that it is going to slow down your fire rescue equipment, potentially for each hump up to 10 seconds for ambulances, got a patient in the back. That is something to consider if you're looking on the south end of town and you're the one that's had the heart attack in High Point, it's going to slow them down. I can tell you that if someone's having a heart attack in High Point, that officer is responding at a high rate of speed, cautiously, but a very high rate of speed with their lights and siren on. Every minute you wait for defibrillation, your chances of dying go up 10%. So it's just something to think about. How much do you want to slow down that response if this is the course you decide to take? There can be consequences. Bob, next one is median islands. We've all seen those. Next one. They may improve the feel of the street, might look nicer, enhance aesthetic values. They may reduce some speeds depending upon how they're put in. I know that the challenge you have here is right-of-way, that you have to have land to put it on. So real estate would need to be purchased. If you're not aware, so I know I've heard concerns about how close the sidewalk is on North Sewell's Point Road. The places where it's so close, the end of that sidewalk is the end of your right-of-way. When back 35, 40 years ago, when Lou was the chief here, Lou convinced all those residents on North Sewell's Point Road to donate their land for that sidewalk. So what you have there now is the most amount you have, especially those areas where you see that sidewalk's so close. The land ends there. So that would have to be a financial consideration. The other thing is South Sewell's Point Road is halfway through. You certainly don't want delays to affect grant funds. The other thing is it doesn't affect speeds past the median. I guess what I'd say for everyone is, with any of these traffic calming things, and I think this is where you kind of get into the science, is think about how people drive when they leave the four-way stop, especially if there's several of them. We've all seen it. People gun it between the stops. So it may or may not have a positive effect. The other thing is bicyclists and pedestrians do need to share that compressed area where there's a median. You may have to move drainage, utilities, things of that nature. And it could also impact properties near there. We do have a lot of driveways, so that could be an impact. And I also want to preface this with, I don't have a horse in this race. We're just presenting the information and these all came from engineering organizations. It's not, the traffic engineering school of Tina Czekanowski. It's some extensive research is put into it. Chicanes. So some of you who have lived here for a long time may remember the lone chicane at down there. I think it was actually technically could have been a median there at Ridgeview, the little one that sat in the middle of the road. Again, similar to medians, it may change the way and the feel of the street. Could be good or bad. Like downtown Stewart looks great, my opinion. Westmoreland and Port St. Lucie, not so much. So that's some aesthetics there. Other issues still come back into the whole right-of-way. If you're moving and shifting the road, you need right-of-way. And then the other part of that is even if conceptually you look at Ocean Breeze, that road's not straight. I've seen, when I watch, strangely, I watch these things, but on Westmoreland and Port St. Lucie, I see folks that look at it like a NASCAR course where let me see how fast I can go, weaving through the little medians there. And there's no vegetation in them anymore because people have ran it over and things of that nature. And that's actually what happened to the one on South Sewell's Point Road was everyone kept plowing through the vegetation that was on it, and eventually it just became a concrete obstruction sitting in the middle of a traffic lane. And we had many serious crashes where that was. We would have vehicles regularly hitting it, flipping over, and landing in the yard on South Ridgeview. The next one is optic speed bars. For those of you who've traveled, next Bob, in Europe, you've probably seen these. Some places you see them. If someone asked me for a suggestion, I think something like this would be fantastic heading again towards High Point. They're painted in a fashion where it creates, visually, makes it seem like you're going faster even than you are, which gives you a natural driver's inclination to start to slow down. So heading into that curb, that's what that is. Next page, Rob. It's inexpensive. in the big picture. There are several research studies that say that it does reduce mean speeds, but at this point I couldn't find any long-term research that would say it works for a long time. Again, mostly recommended on a curve, and I think that might be an ideal way if we wanted to try something like that out, which is relatively inexpensive. The only concerns when you look at the cons, some people may not like the way it looks. And you do get that sometimes. You get drivers that might be annoyed that they see a straight road, they don't want to see this stuff, they don't want to slow down. And as with a lot of things that are it's not a physical barrier, once folks know that I'm not really going faster, they may ignore those. And some people who are unfamiliar with the area, they could do something weird because they're unfamiliar with it. And then last but not least, speed feedback signs. We see these around in some places. They cost anywhere, probably by the time it gets into the ground, you're looking at somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 each. Because they do require the posts and the solar and things of that nature. Next page, Bob. They're able to readily inform drivers of their current speed. It potentially encourages them to slow down. As folks get used to them, though, they know it's just a sign, you know, especially for the regulars, they may not change their behavior. They also don't actually enforce a speed limit. And there is some potential for distraction, where folks are paying so much attention to the sign, they're not looking there. You know, some of you may or may not heard, everybody wonders, how can you run into a police car sitting off the road with its lights on? Because cars go where the eyes go. So if somebody is fixated on that sign, the possibility of driving into them is not out of the question. And for those of you who drive through Ocean Breeze on a regular basis, I drive through there every day, it's not unusual to see the poles hit, the palm trees hit, the median hit, because it can provide some level of distraction. I've even read some studies that what you want to do at even higher speeds is to not have it where kids can go out there and say who could get the high score. That at a certain point, it might be set where after 60 miles an hour, it just says slow down. Because of the fact that other things can happen. So those are some methods that, you know, seem to be the most within reach, although whether or not they are recommended or not recommended, again, that's a decision to have. Again, I did provide in the back, again, the whole north and south Sewalls Point Road speed study, as well as the consolidated crash list, we'll call it. For what it's worth, just as a number, could be a can of worms to even say this, but I did check this morning, though. The last level of service inventory that the county had available for North Sewalls Point Road, just so you know, the daily vehicle counts are 11,397. In 2022, there were 9,078, so there's about a 2,000 vehicle change on there. 2021 was 9,874, pretty much almost the same as the year prior. So it'll be interesting to see if they do one for 2024. It's still kind of early in the year for them to push reports out to see if is 2023 an outlier with that increase, or is that going to be the new normal? Because when I looked on St. Lucie Boulevard to Sewalls Point Road, so that would be this little cross section here, they're actually relatively consistent. 2021 was 22,826, 22 is 23,410, 2023 was 23,666. There's only a couple hundred vehicle difference on that, our little half section here on A1A. So is it an anomaly? Is it a change? Don't know. We'll have to wait and see what 2024 numbers come out. Do you have any questions?
No, but I think that was very helpful and edifying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief?
Yes, sir.
So it was an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. But what I gleaned from it was you had two recommendations that you mentioned. You said one was reduce the speed limit from Mandalay to High Point because of the crashes that take place on the curve down there.
Actually starting, I think you need to start that slow down at Henry Sewell Way, which is the Meadows,
Okay,
to give folks adequate time to begin to slow down before they get to the curve. I don't want them waiting till they get to the curve.
and then the other one was that optic speed bars go in the same location.
Approaching that, I think that that's something worth trying, because number one, economics, it's inexpensive. If you don't like it, just go get some black paint, go right back over it. I don't think that the signs are necessarily bad. I think that you're gonna, in the interest of fairness to all citizens, because I've heard folks on River Road that would like those signs, Sewell's Point Road wants them, even though the county owns North Sewell's Point Road, say you want them there, you probably, you know, and if I were picking a number, because both directions, you'd be looking at 8 to 10 of them. So you'd be looking at $40,000 to $50,000.
Okay. But that's, those two recommendations were what I gleaned from your presentation, is that correct?
To a point. I think that even as a non-traffic engineer, I firmly believe I could write you a report that would absolutely justify, and also reducing that speed on the south end of Sewell's Point. I think it's easy enough to justify. You have crash data showing you have 2 speed-related crashes. You have the curve that goes into there, and you're approaching into High Point where the speed limit is 20 miles an hour like on all of the other side streets.
And then,
From what I've researched, it would seem the others, you would need to actually hire a traffic engineer, do a proper engineering study, and if they can come back and say, absolutely, you should do this, you'd be kind of covered in terms of the fact that you're now following Florida state statute and both manuals.
okay. And then one other point, in 2 of the slides you had that there was no right-of-way land for islands, and that's counter to what Mr. Capra had stated. He said that there were 2 locations to where islands and speed tables could be accommodated in Phase 3 Road Resiliency Project, and 2 locations where it could be accommodated in Phase 2 Road Resiliency Project. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, I'd like to open this up for public comment, if Town Manager.
I was just going to make one announcement that probably everybody should understand, because they might not have been to a workshop before. The workshop is to get information. The commission requested it, so they could hear directly from the residents of what their thoughts are, especially after hearing the chief's presentation. But they will not be making a decision here tonight. The actual voting would have to occur at a meeting. So it's important that we have these, because there's not a time limitation, but in the essence of time, because a lot of you have taken part of your Saturday to be here, we hope that if you've already heard the comment, you can agree with it and instead of re-explaining the same comment. So that'll keep from having a duplication, if you don't mind me mentioning that.
Sure.
Thank you.
If anybody has any public comment that hasn't filled out one of these cards must be filled out and brought to the town clerk. The first person coming up will be Johnny Colson. After Johnny Colson will be Crystal Tutterman. Mr. Colson, your address, please?
Johnny Colson, One Heritage Way. Over the years, it seems like spend money is the solution for everything in this town, and it's time we stop. I'm going to keep this short and simple. I'm a retired police officer. I've worked radar. I've worked Miami, and where it was really, really bad neighborhoods, speed-wise, and we corrected it. It can be corrected here if our elected officials will do their job and instruct our town manager to do his job, to instruct our chief of police to do her job, to enforce the state statutes with the speed limits that are already here. We don't need to spend a dime on speed bumps. You're holding the residents accountable instead of the offenders. So don't spend money. Let's start issuing tickets. half of the people on South Source Point Road, and certainly more than half on North Source Point Road, are not residents here. They could care less. They're going. So please, let's do what we already have assigned to do, the speed limits. Let's enforce them. Let's write tickets. And that will take care of it in months. So, thank you.
Thank you. Crystal Totterman.
Good morning. I'm Crystal Totterman. I live at 107 North Sewell Point Road. I'm also the owner of Sewell Point Pharmacy. I've been here before. Thank you, Chief Tina, for the detailed information. One thing that I want to point out that wasn't included in Chief Tina's presentation as a potential option is stop signs, which are pretty cost-effective. If a speed light or a speed visual is $5,000 to install, I would imagine a stop sign would be less than that. So that would be an option. But ultimately, the reason I think we're talking about this is because we are a residential town. Sewell's Point was founded as a residential place, and it has become, especially on the north side, a thoroughfare for a lot of commuting traffic, including large trucks, delivery trucks, people that are just passing through from outside the county through our residential neighborhood. And I think, thankfully, we haven't had any pedestrian or cyclist crashes because they would probably be fatal if that happened. At 30 to 35 miles an hour, your chance of surviving a crash, if hit while you're walking, is 20% or less. So I think the point that I'm trying to make is that it's time to prioritize the residents and the town as a priority and allowing us to enjoy our scenery, be outside, be active, be healthy, safely walk our pets, ourselves, our children to ride bicycles, and exist in this town that has always been a town and not necessarily established as a thoroughfare. And everywhere else in Martin County and in St. Lucie County, the speed limit on that road is 25. And I would venture to say Sewell's Point Road has some of the highest property value of that entire road, and it is now kind of just degraded because it's a thoroughfare for traffic. So I think there are a lot of benefits in reducing the speed of that road. Potentially, it may reduce it being used as a commuter way. I think it will prove benefit for the town, both from an aesthetic standpoint and from a health and safety standpoint. And one other thing we could do is we could always bring back the 10-cent bridge toll. Maybe the 25-cent bridge toll, too. That's it.
Bill Cleary.
Bill Cleary on One Island Road. First of all, this is the most patrolled road probably in the country, okay, by the police department, okay? I can't drive into Sewell's Point up and down this road without seeing the patrol going, so I kind of disagree with the first comment. So, you know, at some point in time, you got to use common sense, okay? If you're driving 15 miles an hour, you're going to kill somebody, okay? If you hit them with a car, okay? So what is, you know, what's the right number? You can stop a car in a matter of a second going 30 miles an hour, you know, without skidding. It's, you know, we've got to use some common sense. You know, the common sense is to put sidewalks in, which I know the history of Sewell's Point. Everybody's been against it, but that's the real danger, you know, are the people walking, people on bikes. How many accidents have you had where you know people have been going the speed limit, you know? So is it the problem with the speed limit? They can't catch every car, you know, that's coming up and down the road, but it's really patrolled a lot, you know? So I don't think, you know, putting an island in or speed bumps, that's just gonna really have a terrible look to it. So I would, you know, at the most, you know, drop it 5 miles an hour. That's it.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Diane Kimes.
Diane Kimes, 2 Riverview Road. I've lived in Sewell's Point since 1994. To me, Sewell's Point is a quality of life, and we always say, what makes us different? Well, I'm here to tell you what makes us different is from the following communities. Palm City, all gated communities have 25-mile-an-hour speed limits. Indian River Drive has lower speed limits. Parts of East Ocean Boulevard is actually 30 miles an hour from St. Mary's Episcopal Church to Confusion Corner. North River Shores is all 25 miles an hour. Jupiter Island is 25 miles an hour. North and South Sewell's Point, St. Lucie Boulevard, north and south, are 25 miles an hour. When Chief says that 85% go at 38 miles per hour up to, that's a lot of people. And as a residential community, I mean, I would live with 30 miles an hour up and down those roads. For those of us who live on or near Sewell's Point Road, it is untenable, the noise that happens. And I would venture to say that the traffic study, I don't know if it calculated the number of commercial vehicles that are on the roads. I can hear it when it turns 8 o'clock because I see it, and I hear it. So I just think when you look at the average age of the Sewell's Point resident is 61 years old, the amount of distractions that are here, and I know the studies, I know there's the statistics, but it's about a quality of life, and it is a residential community with the exception of Harbor Bay. So as a runner, as a a cyclist, I think I see kids riding their bikes on Sewell's Point Road. I see them, with their fishing poles going down to Archipelago to fish. And especially when it's in dusk and, I just think about the speed limit. And I just would encourage and advocate for a lower speed limit and then enforce it. Lou Savini, God bless him, was really, aggressive about writing tickets. And that's something that I would also encourage. Enforce whatever you decide, but enforce it. And even if it's 37 miles an hour, give them a ticket, because that's the only way you're going to change behavior. Thank you.
Arthur DeShane.
I agree with, my name is Arthur DeShane. I agree with,
Arthur, your address, please.
please?
Your address. Where do you live? Address.
Oh, I'm sorry. I live in North Sewell's Point Road off of Periwinkle.
All right. The physical, is it 125, whatever the
Oh,
address?
okay.
Yeah, that's what I need.
North Sewell's Point Road. I'm sorry, North River Road.
Okay. Yes, good.
Oh, I'd like to say that it's true what people say, it's a major thoroughfare. It's created more traffic because a lot of people don't want to use the Roosevelt Bridge. There's really only 4 lanes to be able to get on the other side of, from north to south to north of the St. Lucie River, unless if you want to go way out and around. What's happened is Route 1 has become it's a traffic jam. It's a parking lot at certain times. So people subsequently cut through and go to North Sewell's Point Road to get to where they're going. Now you have the delivery trucks, which create more of a nuisance, and the people that live on North Sewell's Point Road, they don't have any accommodations for the most part for large delivery trucks. I came across a time where there was a tractor trailer loaded with pavers that blocked the whole lane. How can you do that? This shouldn't have been allowed. Let them take smaller trucks to convey the stuff. Let me think. That's it. I'm against lowering the speed limit. I've driven on where they decreased the speed limit on Indian River Drive in St. Lucie, and I think that it's caused more problems than it's solved. And that's That's all I'm gonna say. And you're talking about different situations in a lot of those areas where where they have lower speed limits. Like, that's a county road. That's not a town, a little town road. It's not a development road. It's a Martin County road. Yes, I agree, it's through a neighborhood where we live, but unfortunately, it is what it is. Unless you put signs up that say no through traffic. All right, I'm done.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you.
Kishel Stein.
Hello, my name is Cashel Stein, and I live on Ridgeland Drive. What is that? Oh, I live on Ridgeland Drive. I'm the oldest of my 4 siblings, those 3, and we see drivers regularly speeding on our road, and it worries me because I want to feel safe in my own front yard, and I don't want the risk of my siblings to get hit or my dog. And I just would like it if you at least did something to either lower the speed limits, put a speed bump, signs, whatever. I just would really like it if you lowered the speed limit. And thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you, Kishel. Jesse Stein.
Hi. It's gonna be tough. I'm Jesse Stein, 14 Ridgeland Drive. I'm here to talk about the speed limit and the detour that's gonna be coming down my road. It's kind of both. That detour situation affects my family a great deal, and the speed limit on these roads also affects my family a great deal because we're very active. The speeding on our street and the corners of our street has been a great issue. In the short time that we've lived here, in the 8-9 years that we've lived here, and the short time that they've used our street as a detour or cut through, the traffic that's speeding down this street continues up our street and then sometimes on the River Road. We have young people. We have 13 children on our street now, outside every day, bikes, scooters, playing. Their buses are there. As you saw in the speed study, a lot of that speeding time, a lot of those people speeding were at the hours when the kids are getting on and off buses. The fact that the average speed was higher than the actual speed limit everywhere means that there are a lot of people speeding. She said that lowering the speed limit will only reduce it by 3 or 4 miles per hour, potentially. That would bring it to what the actual speed limit is now. I recently came to City Hall to raise my concerns about the detours and the speed down in our section of South Sewell's Point, and the individual I spoke to is dismissive of my concerns. My concerns were pedestrian and children's safety. We have to, in this situation, be more proactive than reactive. In my field, I'm a pilot, we say that the rules and laws are written in blood because nothing changes until somebody dies. We don't want that in our community. As we've already seen, pedestrian deaths are on the rise in the past few years. As studies I've read, Florida's in the top 3. We've all experienced what it's like to have a pedestrian and neighbor die in our community due to reckless driving. After reviewing more studies coming out of Florida recently, it's just continually going up. These studies say that there are statistical ways to stop this, and they are slower speed limits, traffic calming, infrastructure, and signage. These are proven ways to save people's lives. When I came here, I suggested that on our street, we would even have, when their detour happened, we could have temporary speed bumps and lower speed limit or radar signs. I think that is needed in our community. I see people, I've been passed multiple times, not just once, driving down this road, and I was going the speed limit. Somebody sped by me. These measures that have been brought up in the situation are proven ways to save lives in a community, and we're all here. I brought my children. We just want it to be safe for everybody. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dr. Stein?
It's okay. We have a lot of people speaking.
Okay. All right. Lisa Wildy.
Lisa Wildy, 5 Quail Run Lane. My main concern is the pedestrian crossing from North Sewell's Point going over the Hutchinson Island Bridge. I walk at night, I wear a light, I wear a reflector, and I have had to jump out of the way of cars. And they're mostly the cars that are taking a left over Ocean Drive heading towards Hutchinson Island, because they are not looking at pedestrians crossing. And I only ever cross when it says it's safe to cross. So when we are crossing, those people are taking a left right into where I should be having a safe passage, which I haven't. So I would really like to see for the 30 seconds that that signal says it is safe to cross, that it is safe to cross, because right now it is not safe to cross. And I'd like to avoid, any pedestrian deaths or anything in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Mike Anthel.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission and staff, my name is Mike Anti. I live at 18 Fieldway Drive. I am often the voice of contrarianism, and I guess I am here today too. I'll spare you the long story, but we are, at least at my house, specifically talking about the rate, lowering the speed limit on the north side. All the rest of it, I honestly don't have an opinion on, and I support staff's recommendation. But specifically lowering that speed limit, we are opposed to in my house. That includes my kids, my wife, and certainly the folks that I've spoken to. Our house backs up directly to the road. I don't hear and see a lot of what I do hear and see on social media in reference to kind of the problems on that road. What I do know, though, is I spend a lot of time in lobbying and advocacy and trying to change rules in local, state, and federal governments. And one thing we counsel people is that we can live in the world that is and try and change the world that is, or we can live and try and change the world that we wish it was. And the reality is, whether we like it or not, that is the main thoroughfare. Everybody that I know, we use that road all day long, whether it's Publix, whether it's school, whether it's anything north of Ocean Boulevard, it is the main road. And so the changes that we consider here as a town today, again, whether we like it or not, does affect the entire community outside of Sewell's Point. So I just encourage you to keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Art Schwartz.
Hi, I'm Art Schwartz. I live at 21 Lantana Lane. We have happy hour every day at 5 o'clock at my house, if you'd like to stop by.
On Saturdays?
To an extent, I don't want to take a lot of time. I want to agree with Johnny Colson and Diane Kimes to an extent. I don't have a problem with 35 miles an hour. I do ride my bicycle every day, 6 days a week, up and down South Sewell's Point Road. What I'd like to see is simply enforce the law. Give out more speeding tickets. Nobody wants a speeding ticket. And I don't care if you're going 36 miles an hour and the people want to challenge it in court. Who wants to go through that kind of a hassle and pay a lawyer or just however you want to do that? Nobody wants the hassle related to getting stopped. It's embarrassing, it's costly, nobody wants that. So enforce the law. I'd like to see you install some signage conceivably, and I have 3 samples here that maybe I can leave that, yield for, and these are US DOT signs. I just downloaded these, and, who can I give these to?
Right here.
Okay, well, when I'm done. Lastly, properties with overgrown vegetation. Again, I'm speaking strictly on South Sewell's Point Road. You've got vegetation that comes literally out into the roadway. So if you're on a bicycle, or if you're walking a dog, or if you've got a baby carriage, you've got to go around that. So at the end of the day, we need to, if you live on South Sewell's Point Road and you've got vegetation or branches hanging over, it needs to be cleaned up. You need to be maintained, and hopefully there's some sort of a violation if you don't do it, because if you do give somebody a ticket for that, it won't happen again. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Art. Jason Boltman.
Hi, everyone. Jason Boltman, 3 Ridgeview Road, South. So I'm a bicyclist runner, and I've been really concerned about the speeds here ever since I moved here. But I kind of thought I was the only one. I'm gratefully not the only one. I really appreciate who I've heard from over the years that there's a significant concern about safety in our neighborhood. And I'd like to echo the Steins and represent the families that can't be here today that would say the exact same thing that they did so eloquently. Thank you. Are those slides available? No?
That's what I'm looking for right now, sorry.
So I guess to be succinct, I think our speed limit needs to be 25 miles an hour. So I'm going to advocate for lowering our speed limit. I don't think it makes sense to spend a lot of money if not necessary. So to the first comment, nobody wants to spend a lot of money, but we do have a problem. And so I'm an engineer, I've done a lot of design work, and you kind of need a problem statement to start with. And the problem is too many people are going too fast. 35 miles an hour, if everybody goes under that, that might be fine. If people are respectful and they slow down when appropriate, I think we're fine, but that's not happening. When there's a pedestrian waiting to cross the road, especially to crosswalk, they have the right of way. No one seems to know that. When there's a bicyclist riding in the lane of traffic, they have full right to that road, and very, very few people maybe appreciate that. So when a car and a bicycle have to actually use the same road, that happens all the time, and the car should generally slow down. When there's somebody on the, on the shoulder walking, that car should slow down so it's safer and there's not an accident or a dead person. We don't want to have these meetings after a significant accident and after a family member or a neighbor is lost. So again, being proactive here today. So again, we have too many people going too fast, so we need to reduce the speed limit. My pro-con here, because I knew people would, have a reason to not lower the speed limit, I would appreciate better understanding why that is. Again, this road is 100% residential. We have our kids, our elderly, our pets. Everybody should be concerned about the higher speeds here. And there's a few data regarding survivability of accidents occur, so this is evidence-based information. You can see the speed limits here, so if people are going close to 40 miles an hour, there's, according to this study, which I have the source of the information in the notes of the slide, so, but anyway, 42 miles an hour, 50% risk of death of a pedestrian. And then the next slide, it's a similar study that had similar results. So again, I have the sources of this information, but if you want to kind of capture, there was a comment about the how someone can die at 15 miles an hour. Yeah, but the point is, when we are looking at 38 miles an hour versus reducing that down to 28, I have a much better chance of surviving that accident. So, so anyway, that's my conclusion, is we need a lower speed limit. I'm a huge fan of enforcement. We do need more enforcement, but that's not to suggest that they aren't doing an excellent job in this neighborhood. I really appreciate everyone on the force doing what they can. But, and then, this was, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I have a good friend who is, and she said, given this neighborhood, this might be something that could be effective. We don't want to slow down emergency vehicles, but we do need to slow down everybody else that's A, not respectful, and B, doesn't know, how to improve the safety in our neighborhood. So, thank you.
Thank you. H.B. Barrett.
No, and I haven't been drinking yet. But I am walking like I have been. H.B. Barrett, 23 East High Point Road. My comments will only speak to South Sewell's Point Road. I live at the very south end in the High Point subdivision, and I guess you can understand that I'm not interested in reducing the speed limit. Reducing it to 30 or even 25 until the road is widened like it is the stretch between Henry Sewell Way and High Point is still going to be awfully dangerous. And I was very surprised at the traffic study. It shows that on South Sewell's Point Road only, if you take the approaching and receding, only about 3% exceed 40 miles per hour. And less than 0.4% exceed 45. I think the chief had some good ideas with the curve down near Henry Sewell about reducing that to 25, and also putting in the little squares, whatever you want to call them. And I'm sure Commissioner Kurzman would like that to be reduced to 25 too. He and I have spoken coming out of there. Coming out of High Point, you pick up the speed because it goes from 20 to 35, and coming around that curve, anybody that lives on his street has difficulty getting out on the roadway. Thank you.
Thank you, HB.
Hey, I can walk again.
Brits Carey.
Good morning. Mayor Liz Carey, 76 South River Road. My comments are mostly for the south end, really. I've lived here for over 35 years. I think we're all united in our quest for safety, increasing safety. Being an environmental scientist, it is really important to me that I haven't read the report, so it may be in the report, but one of the things that really is used for traffic calming purposes is street landscaping. We have some natural landscaping, however, that can be always added to, where the narrowing effect created by plantings will slow people down naturally. And I think we should consider that, especially when FPL trucks come and they try to minimize the tunneling effect that we're getting. And in addition, more landscaping can be put in for calming effects. I also would like to say that I am not for humps and bumps. I think they have environmental consequences. They add pollution. This is part of the Department of Transportation. Twice as much pollution is added around those areas compared to intersections. So you add a hump, you're adding noise pollution, air pollution, so that we should consider all the other methods of reducing speed if that's what we want, but not the humps and the bumps. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rito Lehman, if I'm reading this correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm actually, you guys covered it for me. I live on Ridgeland as well. And when that detour comes, it is a highway. And there are, as he said, 13 kids on that street. I'm a grandma. And they come and visit me, and my son won't let them, he lives in Palm Beach Gardens, ride their scooters on Ridgeland because of the traffic. I don't want to put the detour on someone else's street, but there's got to be something about that detour. It affects River Road, it affects the other people, well, not Via Lucinda, because it's a circle, you don't use that one. How about the next one? How about we alternate, let the next street take it for a while? It's bad. But thanks, everybody on Ridgeland. Thank you.
Thank you. Estelle and Celeste Totterman.
Hi, I'm Estelle Totterman. I live on 107 North Sewell Point Road, and whenever I go to bed at like 9 or 7 o'clock, I feel very unsafe because I hear like motorcycles, I hear cars just going like 60 miles an hour. It's like very scary, and I just think as a community, I think we could help that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Merkin.
Cindy Merkin, 9395 North Sewell Point Road. My comments are addressed to North Sewell Point Road only. If you look at the basic physics of speed limits, reducing the speed limit is going to make it so that the traffic that is coming through North Sewell Point Road is compressed. Right now, it's enough of a pain in the tush to make a left-hand turn out of my driveway at rush hour, and that's with, you have some gap coming this way and some gap coming that way, and you're trying to find your way in between. If the speed limits are lessened on that road, then the gaps are going to be reduced in some cases to nothing, and it's going to be that much more of a pain in the you-know-what to basically make that left-hand turn. That's not only for the people that live on that road, but it's also, I've seen, I'm like right by Rivercrest, and I see some lawn maintenance folks where they've got their truck and then the thing they're pulling behind it, and they too are trying to make a left-hand turn, and if it's hard for me in a car, it's twice as hard for them because they need that much more distance or span to make that left turn. So my request is leave the speed limit alone, enforce the speed. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori Murphy?
Hello, Lori Murphy, 8 Heron's Nest. I moved here in 1976. I moved originally to High Point. I now live on Heron's Nest. Yes, the housing was less, the traffic was less, and all of that, but I have a simple solution that's not going to cost us any money. The solution is, when I came here, Chief Lou Savini and Tina wrote tickets like crazy, No, everybody was afraid of Sewell's Point. Nobody would come here. Everybody went around, they didn't care how much longer it took. And it worked. People were scared to death. Sewell's Point, if you said, I live in Sewell's Point, they're like, oh, we never go to Sewell's Point. Great, that's perfect. All we have to do is write 1 million tickets, get the revenue from the tickets, hire more police, and raise the salary of the police that we have so they stay here. And it's a no-brainer to me, because we don't have to do anything other than impose what we have, get the speed limits down to where they are. 35 is fine with me. If you want it lower, I don't care. But I want everybody to get a ticket all the time, including me, if I go over the speed limit. And that's what's going to work. In 3 months, you won't have anybody here. That's it.
Thank you very much. Paul Gill.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm Paul Gill from 14 Periwinkle Lane, and my property abuts North Sewell Point Road. So at 4:30 in the morning, I immediately hear the big trucks and the fishermen, everybody who knows the cut-through road. At 4:30 in the morning, it's on, game on. And I'm not, big on the police, writing tickets more for people or whatever, but I think when we all ride down the road and you see, not even here, wherever you are, you see a police car and you automatically think, oh, let me hit the brakes and slow down, right? So a more maybe even cost-effective way would be to take some of the retired police vehicles and just park them along the road and rotate them Because if people see that, they're automatically going to slow down. Oh, is there a cop in that car? I mean, you know, they got the shaded windows, you wouldn't be able to tell whether they were in there or not. And certainly, the officers that are out there, if they see people, you know, judging from the study that we saw, I mean, I've seen people go by my house at 90 miles an hour. So that's a clear present danger to the people that live in that neighborhood. So I'm not really big on speed bumps, speed tables. You know, people don't see them, they crash into them, they can, you know, jump off the curb and, you know, run somebody over or whatever. So there's a lot, you guys have a lot to deal with here. But certainly, you know, retired police vehicles moved around occasionally would be the most cost-effective way to maybe get people to slow down. And then, of course, the people that want to speed, then Chief Tina has to write tickets. And, you know, some tickets, if people see police cars that no one's even in. Some states, they even have blow-up ones where they blow them up and stick them on the side of the road and move them around, right? So, but we have vehicles that we're constantly ditching that look just like any other normal one. Let's try using some of those. And now, I'm sure Chief Tina might say, well, where the hell are we going to park these things, right? Well, I'm on Periwinkle Lane, so if you want to block one lane during the course of the week and people come down that road and they see, oh, there's a police car, they're going to slow down. So, I mean, that's something that's cost-effective, something that could be implemented immediately, right? And then we could do a study on that to see if that helps slow people down before we go to speed tables, signs that are flashing in front of my, you know, into my bedroom or my house or whatever. Nobody's going to want to have that. What, you're going to put that over there at my house, right? I mean, if it works, that's one thing, right? But let's think about maybe some easy solutions that we could implement right away. And I know it's going to tax the town that they got to move these cars around, but, you know, they're being hired to be in the police cars to do nothing unless there's an emergency. So when there's no emergency, they could move those vehicles around, and then, you know, you don't see the same cop car in the same place every day, you know? And I'm sure when you rode around, you see there's some cars that they put in certain areas that when I see it, I automatically slow down. But I'm not necessarily a speeder either, but it still impacts me, and I say, maybe I should slow down here, right? That's all I got to say. Okay?
Thank you so much. Any more public comments on this? Yeah, Tina, please. Chief.
No, I just feel the need to defend the phenomenal job that my police officers do out here every day. There's 7 officers in our entire department. Last year, they stopped 2,026 vehicles. Okay? It's a lot of cars getting stopped. 900 of them got tickets, which I'm going to tell you in the long history that I've been here, it's always a 50-50 proposition on whether someone gets a ticket. And then another 487 written warnings and then a bunch of verbal warnings for different reasons. But in addition to that, they handled another 1,612 calls for service. They went ahead and, at your request, went ahead and checked another 1,226 houses. They went on 200 either fire or medical calls. We had another generic police service calls. You asked for help for something, 255 times. 672 town ordinance violations. Okay, so when folks say that we don't enforce the ordinances, let's be clear, we do. Okay, we just try to do it in a nice way. My officers are busy. Nobody's sitting around doing nothing, just waiting for the phone to ring. I just want to make that clear. They're out there all day long, turning over every stone, okay? They're out there doing the job, okay? And I just feel like I have to go ahead and make that clear, okay? I do not have a level of dissatisfaction on the job that they're doing. Also, just so you know, as soon as you left my office, I went to the town manager and insisted that speed humps needed to be put in on the detour route, just so we're clear on that as well. So hopefully that's going to come to fruition. They're just trying to decide what kind and going right in front of your house. So as requested, I didn't feel like you should have to pay for it. Okay, so, and the detour route's going to be a challenge, folks. In addition to that, on the MOT, sir, if you're not aware, it's not just on your street. I also requested from the company that they put signs out for at least 3 blocks out. And if you read the email I sent out, and another one's going out just like it on Monday, saying, please try to use the other streets and be nice to your neighbors. I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't care where you drive now. People are jerks in cars. There's no nice way to say it. They are. Okay? Everywhere. Everywhere. Okay? Well, but everywhere. That's what I'm telling you, is that it's, there's going to be a lot of angst for 4 months while they do that. Okay? People need to be courteous. Be courteous to your neighbors, but pedestrians also. Please get out of the road when there's 2 lanes of traffic. Folks are trying to get to work. Folks are trying to get to school. Everybody's just got to work together. Okay, and then the next phase is going to come. What we did do last time is we did try to shift the detour routes a little bit. The problem we have, what was the number one thing that folks ran into? Trees. We can't get trucks down a lot of streets in town. So, when we choose these places, because to be honest, we could be further down, but the problem is it's not a street that we can get large vehicles down, and folks still want rooms to go. They still need a moving truck. So, well, I'm very hopeful. Yes. Yep. I'm hopeful that once the job's done, we won't have to close South Sewell's Point Road. That would be a beautiful thing, I think, for all of us if we could drive down the road and not have it be flooded all the time. Because you are getting a significant burden from that, because you are the biggest street that folks can safely go down when the road's flooded and it's unsafe to drive down there. So it is. I totally agree on that. So
How fast can I go over the speed limit?
I can't legally write you a ticket till you're doing 6 over.
6 over?
By law.
I have.
Okay, and again,
Enforcing 6 or 10?
we're not enforcing 6. I'm not going to get into it. It's enforced on a case-by-case basis based on the circumstances. Officers have discretion. And I'm going to tell you that we're going to, again, I've got 6 officers out there. That's including the lieutenant. I would be the 7th officer that we have right now. And they're relatively new officers. So, again, there is a learning curve associated with it as well. Like one of the officers we have hasn't even been to radar school. He can't run radar until he does. But he's going to be in training for a long time anyway. The reality is we prioritize what we do. Again, they're not sitting around just saying, gosh, I hope I've got something to do here in a minute. Okay? That thing's going all the way around. I think you guys don't realize that we actually get excited, okay, when we get somebody going fast because we want to deal with that guy. I mean, if you could have seen me in that car when my radar went bing, and I'm like 116, I mean, that makes your night as a cop. It really does. Man, you should have seen the guy I got. Okay, so it's not that we don't want to. We do want to, okay? But if I'm out there stopping every guy doing 6, the guy doing 10 is driving right by me. Okay? But in addition, they're doing all of these other things. That doesn't count in the criminal cases. We did have that incident that you guys got an email blast about, the guy that took off on North River Road. When stuff like that happens, Officer DeBlaker has been filing for search warrants and subpoenas and, sending in stuff for DNA to the crime lab. I mean, police work is somewhat labor intensive. It's not just all stop car, write ticket. There are things that happen here that if you read the quarterly reports that come out, I think some of you would be kind of surprised how much other types of actual police work occurs in the town of Sewell's Point, other than just stopping cars, writing tickets. But people are still scared to drive here. And I agree. I love that reputation. I want folks to be like, oh, when they get to the top of that bridge. That's what we want to have happen.
So, we got the email about the chase. Whatever happened, because we never.
We're pursuing a criminal investigation right now. I feel very confident that individual will be going to jail.
So they caught us.
We have evidence that will allow us, at some point, like I said, we have to, I'll be honest with you, some of it, we had got a warrant, we've cut the airbags out of the car, they've gone to the crime lab, we're getting DNA off of it, and we know whose car it is, so we're going to be able to match their DNA with the DNA left on those airbags, and he's going to jail.
I guess the point is, it would have been nice to know that he wasn't at large still.
Well, we didn't know that he wasn't at large. I mean, clearly by the next day, once the helicopters left, my biggest concern at that point, because I'm at home sending that email out, because I know you guys might think that there's a lot of officers on duty, but it takes, there's 1 officer on duty. Again, there's, in essence, 4 road patrol officers right now. Okay, and then the lieutenant and I, because one guy's in training, so he has to be with another officer then, so he counts, but he doesn't count until he's out on his own, numerically. So when that happens, there's a lot of things we're doing. The lieutenant came in from home, I'm home sending those things out. What we didn't want to have happen is, you see, a guy with a canine in your backyard. and, you know, you let the dog out. So that was it. But fortunately, the sheriff's office responded, the city steward came out to help us. But yeah, I feel very confident that person's going to jail. Just patience, you know. But again, it's very labor intensive, you know. I spent all day working with him on, you know, the paperwork aspect of it in terms of warrants, things of that nature. You know, he's at the crime lab the other day getting all of his DNA stuff submitted down there. It's time consuming. But so it's not just this, and it's not that that's not important. Clearly, if not, they wouldn't have stopped over 2,000 vehicles. Okay, they're out there shaking the trees. So I just feel like I had to share that. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Any other?
I just have a quick question. I heard, I think there were a couple of people that were opposed to taking some sort of action to improve the safety of the road, whether it's reducing the speed. I heard from you, you're concerned that it's going to delay your ability to exit your home.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important as we go forward and we talk about this as a community that we understand if there is opposition, why. So from you, sir, you're not for maybe reducing the speed limit, but are you opposed to taking action to improve the safety of the road for pedestrians and cyclists? And if so, just want to understand like what your hesitancy is why you wouldn't want anything to change.
That's a good point.
Just asking. I mean, because I think it's really important.
This is out of order right now. We're filling out cards, and we've all had our chance for comment.
So I think that's the only thing I think is really important to understand, and I don't mean to, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but if folks aren't.
Yeah, but we got to keep the meeting in order.
Okay,
So,
sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to just try to understand. That's all. Yeah.
Diane, if you want to fill out a card again, or.
I just have a question, because because I think for emphasis, Chief Tina, there's Florida statutes that say that police officers cannot write a ticket if they're going less than 6 miles an hour. Over the speed limit. Okay. So the most you can, so if you go 41 miles or higher on our road, you'll get a ticket. May get a ticket. That's for the current. 40 miles an hour, that's fast. For the current speed limit at 35 miles an hour.
Just a question.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Art.
Art, can you come up to the mic? Sorry.
Sorry about that. Art Schwartz again, 21 Lantana. Is it conceivable for those people who are speeding less than 6 miles over the limit, that if there was like one of those radars that you see on the side of the road that measures it, that those people could automatically get a letter generated saying you were speeding such and such? Please be aware that you're speeding over the limit. You're not getting a ticket, but consider this to be a notice that you were noticed speeding on such and such a date, such and such a time. I mean, is that something that could be done? That the commission could literally, or the police department could send out that type of a notice, email, text?
Speed cameras are authorized for citations in school zones.
Okay.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to commission comments.
Before I make comment, I have a question for the chief. Chief, where you said that you can't write a ticket unless it's 6 miles an hour over by law. I'd like clarification. You can't write a ticket, or rather it will not be enforced by a court?
You cannot. Well, you should ask the legislator. I'm sure one of them probably got a ticket for 3 over, and now we went ahead and passed a law that says you get a warning from 1 over to 5, you know. But secondary to that, and I know everybody says, oh, well, zero tolerance, but the reality of it is that you really want us dealing with the guy who was doing 2 over or the guy that's doing 10 over? Okay. You know, again, as I mentioned very early on, over 600 occasions, the officers did nothing but sit on the side of the road, look for speeders. Now, And I will say this, that to warn all of you, the tolerance level is a lot lower, again, on the side streets. Okay? We're going to say 26 is very different on Ridgeland than realistically 41 is on South Sewell's Point Road. Okay? When you, again, everything is about somewhat of a risk analysis. That is a way more dangerous circumstance. When we look at safety issues, those of you talk about the safety of kids at the school bus stops. Nobody's doing anything silly at a school bus stop in Sewell's Point because there's a police car behind the bus. Okay? All of you seen the buses here. What do you see right behind it? And how many of you folks drive right past that school bus with the police car behind it? You'd be surprised if you knew how many. Okay? Yes. Okay? So again, we have very limited resources in terms of our manpower. We'd love to hire 3 new officers, but to be honest, all the agencies are short right now. There's just not enough applicants to fill the positions. So when you look at where are you going to devote your resources, you bring it to the most important places. I think there's few people here that wouldn't argue you want to see us behind every school bus. Okay, if we're not doing something else, that's where our officers are going to be. So it's about somewhat prioritization. Okay, when we sit down and look at what's safe, what's unsafe, we go with what is the most dangerous, #1 priority. Calls for service we need to respond to. And all of those things come in a varying order. So it's not that there's no enforcement out there. It's just a matter of prioritizing what is the most important, okay, at any given time.
And Chief, one other thing I want to bring up, and you have the answer to it. How many people in the last few years have been declared dead that the police officers have brought back with CPR because of our...
We have several. I say only half flippantly, if I were to have a heart attack, I would want it to happen in Sewell's Point. Our officers have been very successful. I mean, I can tell you personally, in the 36 years I've been here, I've successfully resuscitated 3 people. You know, we have a very fast response time, and that is important to us. Thank you. Interestingly, one turned out to be a friend of my father's. I had no idea what had happened. It was kind of cool. But we've had a number of officers that have successfully resuscitated people. But we get a lot of other serious injuries here on things. Folks dropping chainsaws on themselves, falling off the ladders all the time. And we are always going to be the first ones there.
So the speed limit is 41.
If you want to call it that, try.
If it was 25, 25 would be 31. That's why we want 25.
I'm not debating, sir, what the speed limit should be. What I'm saying is that if you're going to change it, you go ahead, you hire professional traffic engineers to conduct a study based on all of the attenuating circumstances, and if they come back and say to you, this is what it should be, then it's legally justifiable. But if it's not legally justifiable,
And at 42, 50% chance.
I can tell you that in cities around here, when there's a traffic crash in an intersection and there's a stop sign, folks are out there measuring the stop sign. Stop sign's too tall, too short. We're going to sue the city instead of the guy I just ran into. Okay, yes. Okay. You got to follow. It's just a matter of, you know, I'm a rule follower. Okay, we have a statute book. We follow the laws that are in there. They have manuals for these things. We just need to follow the manual. It's that simple. If we can legally justify it and it's something that you want, then, you know, there you go. That simple. Sir? You said you had a couple questions.
No, I asked it. I'm done.
Oh, just look.
Commissioner Mayfield.
I think all this conversation was great, and I think there were some good suggestions brought up, so I appreciate it, and I just wanted to wait till everyone was done. I did want to make a suggestion for all future conversations about this, that we separate South Sewell's Point Road and North Sewell's Point Road, and a subsection of South Sewell's Point Road being speed safety during the project, because they kind of get all commingled, and then I think that leads to some inefficiency. And North Sewell's Point Road is definitely a different beast than South Sewell's Point Road, because we don't get to make the decision on the speed limit there. It's the county, so that would require more of a concerted effort, campaigning the county. You know, we keep saying North Sewell's Point Road, and that's a great idea, but we don't make the decision, so we have to come together on that. Anyways, point is, I think we'll have better, more constructive conversations if for all future conversations we separate those things. That's just my suggestion going forward.
You might also want to add in vegetation too, which a lot of it needs to be cut back. That's in the easement for public safety. There's roads over by Periwinkle, Royal Vista, and I could go on and on. You try and make a left or right, you can't, there's no visibility. And if somebody really is speeding, you're going to get slaughtered in a lot of these cases. And I know the property owners may not be happy that are there, but it's for the safety of the other people that live there. It's more important in human life than saving a bush. I've always been pretty strong in that opinion. The other part was when we mentioned earlier about the detour going through, I had it for over a year in front of my house. My front of my house became the extension of Sewell's Point Road, and got to see a lot of my neighbors get to wave, but most of the people were very respectful. There are some that are in a hurry to go nowhere. Well, you'll see a pickup truck flying down the road. It's a short road, and they're doing maybe 35, 40 miles an hour. It's supposed to be 20. And you have people walking dogs. The other thing is that I see going along, particularly South Sewell's Point Road, is where you have a group of bike riders. And I'm sure everybody in this room has seen something like this one time or another. The bike riders using it like a playground. They're leisurely riding their bikes, and there's cars coming one way, and you're trying to go the other way, and they're blocking traffic, and they're not moving over. So it's a two-way street on that. It's not a playground. It's still, we're moving traffic. People have places to go to, and they're doing the speed limit. And they're going beneath the speed limit. As a matter of fact, when you're going 10 miles an hour because you have 3 bicycles, and it's like, I'm here, you can't move past me till I'm ready to move over, and they're not moving over. And sometimes you'll see people with baby strollers on South Sewell's Point Road, which I just turns my stomach to see that. We have River Road, on South River Road over here, which is one of the most beautiful roads you could go on. It's great to run on. You want to ride a bike respectively, not where you're going to run over somebody. And, walk your dog. It's a lot safer. Even if it was 25 miles an hour on South Sewell's Point Road, I wouldn't recommend going out there necessarily to ride a bike. Just for the long run, I'd still use River Road, and the same to walk a dog, or if you're jogging or just walking with your family, it's a lovely road to walk on. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, problem with North Sewell's Point Road, I'll just handle North Sewell's Point Road for now, is that the county commission wants traffic to move through as quickly as possible. They don't want traffic to go slowly. They want traffic off this bridge, okay, because it backs up all the way down to on A1A to the plaza down there. So they want the traffic to go as quickly as possible. So there's a very slim chance that we can reduce the speed limit on North Sewell's Point Road. The other issue on North Sewell's Point Road, I understand that it's very difficult for people to get out of their driveways or to get out of their communities. I mean, I have the same issue on Indialucy. I can't get out. I mean, it takes me 15 minutes sometimes. However, if you slow the traffic up further north, it's going to back traffic up down this end, down to Indialucy and onto the bridge. And that's where the commission has the problem with it. I find the most problem that I have on North Sewell's Point Road is noise. It's a noise issue where they have, and it's not so much people yelling and screaming, because the only people yell and scream are bikers, because they can't hear each other. It's not because they're causing any kind of an issue. The other thing is the boom boxes and loud music in the cars and mufflers. Those are the things that make most noise on North Sewell's Point Road. As far as South Sewell's Point Road is concerned, I remember the time when we had the island in the middle, and I remember the time where we replaced bricks, and we did this and we did that, replaced vegetation, and finally, the last of it was when somebody crashed into it, we said, it's got to go. So, I get all of the traffic situation, I understand, but everybody knows South Sewell's Point Road is not a safe road to ride your bicycle on. Okay? I mean, that's just the way it is. The other thing I understand is if we put a sidewalk in, the people who ride the cycles with the thin tires, they're afraid to ride on that because they're afraid to pop their tires. Sounds crazy, but that's what happens, and that's how people think. And so those are my comments on North and South Sewell's Point Road. I don't know what else to tell you about reducing the speed. I don't know if that's going to help. It may not. But some of the things that I do like that I've heard is putting that, reducing the speed around from Henry Sewell to High Point. I think that's a great idea. And those are my comments.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Oh, that was from before.
Okay. Commissioner Titicus.
And Bob, would you mind pulling up the summary that I emailed you this morning? Thank you. I had, we've had approximately, or not approximately, we've had 18 people this morning that have got up and have made various suggestions, and I really appreciate you all coming out and expressing your opinion. I also had 21 people respond to me or email myself and the other commissioners with various suggestions. Some of it is an overlap, and what I'll do is I'll do a retab based on the comments that were made this morning. The summary. There you go.
Let me flip it around.
Thank you. And those 22 folks or 21 folks provided about 32 suggestions. 2 more came in this morning. So, and both of those 2 comments were leave North and South Sewell's Point at 35 miles an hour. So that 41% number would change a little bit, and the percentages will change. But as I said, I'll do a recap based on the comments made this morning and the email suggestions. So the majority of folks said leave it as it is. Then 25% said lower the speed limit to 25 miles an hour, which according to the chief, that means it's 31 miles an hour. 22% of the people said basically enforce the law. And I happen to agree with the comment that Art made, that even if the judge is going to throw it out, take somebody to court, have them spend the time of going to court and to fight the ticket. 16% of the people said that they were interested in speed tables and islands. 6% said cut back the vegetation on South Sewell's Point Road to improve the visibility and also to move the mailboxes back. And I'm remiss because I didn't get an opportunity to go on and see what the Postal Service regulations are about how far or how close the mailbox has to be to the road. But, you know, while we're doing this phase 3, I think there's an opportunity when they reset the mailboxes to move them back the appropriate distance so that you're not impeding bicycles, walkers, and so on down the line. And then one of them was no flashing speed signs, 3%. Another was red light cameras at Sewell's Point and Ocean, 3%. Don't install speed bumps or traffic calming devices, 3%, and create sidewalks and bike lanes. Yeah.
Who are these 21 people?
Well,
Sounds like a very small.
it is. This is definitely is not a statistical. It's not statistically valid. But to the folks that had emailed me, I said I would put together a summary and I'd present it, you know, this morning so that everybody could see it. And the backup piece to it that Mr. Daniels didn't put up, that has everybody's name and comments, and it's an Excel spreadsheet. I'll be more than happy to send it to anybody.
Those are the folks right there.
Yeah. The other thing is, in terms of speed cameras, the chief is absolutely right that according to Florida law, you can put speed cameras up anywhere. However, you can only use speed cameras for a ticket in school zones. So it may be beneficial to consider putting speed cameras up in the town, so that you can identify who the speeders are. And I'll tell you that my wife and my daughter told me I was crazy, but I said that I think the town ought to consider a website of putting up a rogues gallery of the speeders, and you put the license plates up there. So that, once a month, you got the license plates of the people that are speeding. And in terms of North Sewell's Point Road, it is a county road, and there is a challenge, and the only way we're going to get anything done is to lobby the county commissioners. But I think there's another issue here. You have Periwinkle and Palm Court, to where they do not have access to the sidewalk that runs up and down North Sewell's Point Road. So I think if we're going to lobby the county, we ought to take a look at the county and ask them to put in crosswalks at those two locations. And that, in essence, would slow down the traffic on North and South Sewell's Point Road and allow any resident to cross over to the sidewalk and use the sidewalk for walking, running, or doing something else. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Commissioner Fender.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I'm also appreciative of everyone who has come out this morning to express their opinions. I'm a runner and an engineer, so I'm super sensitive to the safety issues and the pedestrian traffic, but also a big believer in the data as well. So I was intrigued by hearing the input, and I captured it all, but I was weighing that against the summary that you've provided us with, Commissioner Titikus, and I'm appreciative of that. But the top one that says leave alone is the 41% higher. I also gathered a lot of feedback during the recent election, and the top 5 initiatives, the top 2 by far were financial stewardship and public safety. And public safety outpaced even financial stewardship, and all the rest were a distant third and fourth. So the data you're providing about leaving us at 35 kind of deviates from the other data, from the passion I'm hearing here, and also the data I've collected. So I'm not huge on change. I'm probably a prolific speeder myself, honestly, but public safety is super important. So it seems to me, from what I heard from the chief, that if you can't issue a ticket for 60 miles an hour over the limit, I sort of lean towards, in areas that we have control, putting pressure on DOT to give us at least 5 miles an hour in that direction and 5 miles an hour in this direction. But I'll continue to listen to dialogue and open to suggestions. I would even be open to a question like this to be more of a data-driven resident survey, or even a referendum. But I lean towards safety, and so I would lean towards the least cost initiative to drive safety in our favor, and that would be towards lowering speed limits.
Yeah, I'm going to go over one more thing. Oh, Gary, please.
Yes, this is an important issue, and it comes up periodically. I know we talked about it in depth probably like 5 years ago and didn't make any major changes. During my election time, I would say that North Sewell's Point garnered more complaints than South Sewell's Point about speed particularly. Safety is always an issue, but like I said, it's the speed limit on South Sewell's Point Road isn't the speed limit on the side roads during construction. You go and put in a stop sign that may seem safer, but it is true that then people might feel safer to do things they wouldn't have done otherwise. In some ways, the South Sewell's Point Road is self-regulating. Everyone knows cars are going fast. You regulate yourself. You start putting in things that make pedestrians feel safer. Are you opening yourself up for more problems, like Chief Tina? It's just a really difficult issue, and I honestly, excuse me, I get half and half. There's not a predominant, let's raise the speed limit, let's lower it. It's half and half. So there's not really a good answer that's going to make everyone happy. Like I said, North Sewell's Point is very different. That one got more complaints. I would think, I've told people I'd be on board to support a 30 miles per hour in North Sewell's Point, just because it does get faster speeds and it does have that sidewalk, which invites people to go out on that road. But that's a harder accomplishment and would require a lot of working together to make that happen. South Sewell's Point, I've always liked the idea of the speed signs because it slows me down, and that's kind of my point of reference. When I see that, I'm like, oh, I'm going a little bit fast. I need to slow down. So I think it would work because I want to not speed. But yes, occasionally I have gone 41 on South Sewell's Point Road. I'm not proud of that, and I don't want to do that. So those signs work for me. I want to follow the rules. So I like the idea of that. I like the curve is an issue because you don't see it coming. So I like Chief Tina's suggestions there. I've always said since I've been a commissioner, any change on South Sewell's Point Road speed limit, because that whole 6 mile per hour ticket thing is odd. I would encourage people to really go to the legislators, the one that made that rule, because that's a stupid rule, as opposed to making us change our speed limit. We also can communicate with our state legislators, but I'm not a fan of that. But we have the road project going on, and I think changing the speed limit right now, and it's just the fact that it's slow and we're here 5 years later, I'm still saying the same thing. I would wait till the project is done to make a change on South Sewell's Point Road, unless everybody else wanted it. But everyone's going to be slowing down. You have the detours to worry about, which are a big deal, I think, because River Road and those side roads have a lot of pedestrians. So I'd like to focus our efforts there to keep that safe before we have to try to get the officers to be attending to everybody not knowing the speed limit has changed on South Sewell's Point Road. So I would suggest holding off on that, working on the project safety, installing radar signs, if everyone else agrees, and then the Mandalay end, and then working with, potentially going to the county and seeing there, because I don't think anyone's tested their readiness recently to change anything on North Sewell's Point Road. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more comment related to South Sewell's Point Road, which I haven't heard mentioned today. And that's that I was here through the entire design phase of the road raising and the improvements on South Sewell's Point Road. And if you'll notice in phase 1, which is now complete, and Joe Capra's running around here somewhere, a lot of design work was in there to try to incorporate sidewalks into this process. For bicyclists and for runners like myself, while we couldn't get an actual physical sidewalk, if you'll notice the way those roads are designed, they're missing the bumps that bikes trip over, but they're also exceedingly wide to the right and left of the traffic zone to give pedestrians more space away from traffic, but also give us space to run and to drive on there. So I think, despite what we decide here, as you see the completion of the 4 phases of South Sewell's Point Road improvement, you'll notice some pedestrian safety already built in just by the space that's being delivered. And you'll also notice it again once phase 3, the second phase 3 gets completed here in the next few months. So just keep in mind that things will improve as, and Commissioner Mayfield's point is pretty valid, that maybe you don't want to make a too strong of a decision until that work is done. But
one of the things I'm considering, and this is something we could talk about as a commission, during the time of the project, to make all of South Sewell's Point 25 miles an hour with the side roads and River Road being 20 miles an hour, and see how that would go, because when people come in, being it's right in the middle of South Sewell's Point, this way it's already calmed down, and as we go into these side roads, then they see it's 20 miles an hour with some little bumps or something in there. And it's worth the test to see how everything goes if we were to consider that. That's something I think we should talk about as a commission as well and get some community input on that. The other thing, I did like the idea of having the empty police car sitting on North Sewell's Point Road. If we get away with that, that's something that, and then what happens after they get used to it, after a couple of weeks, put a live police officer in there. And we'll be able to catch a few fish. Commissioner Titikus.
Yeah, Mayor, I also liked Commissioner Fender's, comment about getting a statistically valid sample. And I think we could turn around and send out to every resident, because we don't have everybody's email address, but we do have everybody's address. And if we were to send out a postcard to where somebody could, let me borrow your phone here, Frank, take their phone and scan a QR code that would take you to a ballot, and then you could, and if we took the top 5 or 10 choices or suggestions that were made here this morning and put them on and ask people to select what they would favor, then we would get at least a stronger representation of what the people in the town actually favor.
One other comment too is that with North Sewell's Point Road, we're very limited on what we can do, and what the Vice Mayor said was correct. I remember we went through this where they need to move the traffic, and I remember the Vice Mayor said that the last time he was a commissioner was that to lower the speed limit there, the county wasn't in favor of that, and I forgot about that it was really to move the traffic off the bridge. And that's very important that we don't back up over here on A1A and the main road. So that's really out of our hands. Vice Mayor.
Well, just to reiterate on your comment, we had asked DOT when the bridge was first done, can we lower the speed limit going through town? And they said, well, the only thing we would consider is to increase the speed limit. We will not consider lowering the speed limit, because they want traffic to go through town and go through Sewell's Point as quickly as possible. I mean, it's an unfortunate situation, but it's reality that if you keep the traffic slower or you stop it at some point, it's going to back up. And nobody's going to be moving for a long time. So, yeah, I get their point. I don't like it. I really don't agree with it to a point, but that's what they want. They want traffic going through North Sewell's Point as quickly as possible.
Town Manager.
I'm going to withhold my comments until we have a meeting, because we're 8 minutes up to a hard stop. So I think it's probably more important to hear from the rest of y'all.
Okay. Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes. To Commissioner Titicus's point about, and Commissioner Fender was saying about more data, I'm not against it, but this is kind of why we did this, right? We put out the emails, I spread the word, everybody spread the word, there are people here. I'm not saying you couldn't get better, but I feel like I said, I feel from my 6 years of doing this, it is a bit 50-50, and it's going to inevitably require us making some decisions based on our input. And I'm not saying the town couldn't do that, but that is, I don't know how easy it would be to scan, do the QR code, get the data digitally, but I don't know if that's, that's money and time. So I'm not against it. If you guys, wanted that, I would suggest that we separate it out, like I said. I think mushing it all together, because we get people from, they have different needs and different parameters we have to work in. So I don't think it should just be a blatant thing to all. I'm not sure that data is going to give us anything more than we have right here, personally, but I could be wrong.
Commissioner Fender.
Yeah, a couple of points. First, about North Sewell's Point and the DOT, I don't think we should give up. I think the human factor there, if we continue to push, I think we can have effect if we need to have, especially with the data that I heard, and I have to go verify that it's 25 miles all the way up past that. So I would say don't not ask, if indeed that's the direction we want to go. And secondarily, I agree with expediency and efficiency. I also would like data, but I think that we've heard several suggestions on things we can do immediately. Clearly, there's some passion and some voice of some safety concerns we have to address. I want to make sure we don't get this mired into, it's bureaucracy and we can't do anything, because there have been some good suggestions that can be done immediately to try to give us some immediate relief that don't cost anything, as well as the longer-term solution of the right process of longer-term voting and data gathering. So I would say do both. And I think, I believe, I know Chief Tina for a while now, and I think she's probably gathered some data here and hears the message, and I would imagine we'll see some improvement shortly. I was here during the pillowcase burglaries, and we placed cop cars all over the place that didn't have people in them. So, I think the community needs to know that we are listening and that there will be, safety is a top concern. And I think Chief Tina hears that as well.
Commissioner Titigus.
The whole purpose of gathering the data is it was clearly pointed out by Mr. Stein, this is not a valid statistical sample. And we've had 18 people get up and express their opinion this morning. We have roughly 2,000 residents in town. Of those 2,000 residents, you have about 935 registered voters. But even if you aren't a registered voter, you're still entitled to an opinion. So this is why I think if we could do a survey. But I also like the idea of, let's take the low-hanging fruit, do what we can do that is no cost, implement that immediately, come up with a game plan to move things forward based on resident input. And that also, you're absolutely right, we need to separate North and South Sewell's Point, because one involves lobbying the county. I'm not sure whether it's a DOT who makes the decision or the county that gets to make the decision, since it's their road. The county is the one that put the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on up through Jensen Beach. So, other than the town of Ocean Breeze, which may have had some say in terms of the Ocean Breeze area. But I do think that we need to get, a pretty good, solid sample in terms of what the residents want to do, because it's their town.
Any other commissioner comments? Staff comments on this? All right, we're going to go on to adjournment. Yeah, we're at 11:30 pretty much right now. Yeah, what we're going to do is move the priorities to another meeting. Whether, I guess we could maybe do that in a workshop as well.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest that, I think we have the forms in the back, and those folks that are still here, if you are interested in having feedback on what the priorities are, not traffic related necessarily, but what are your 5 priorities that you want to see this commission work on in the future? And if you can leave those here or drop them off later on at town hall, or give me a call and I'll get it from you if you need to. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. Vice Mayor brought up a good idea, but if we reduce the speed limit on North Sewell's Point, then we're going to create the problem on the backup on the bridge. We have to be diligent about what we're going to pick. The idea of putting those vacant police cars there, we can start that immediately, where you can find out if that's working or not before we definitely commit to lowering speed limit. Make sense? This way we don't make a decision and then create a problem somewhere else. Then we're gonna be back in here and we're gonna be just barking up your tree again. So maybe we can just do, little steps at a time, see what works before we get to those major decisions and spending city money.
Yes. Yes, Diane.
I have a question. Last time when the construction was happening on South Sewell's Point Road, the speed limit was temporarily reduced. Was it 25 or 30? And is that going to happen again with the construction moving forward? Because I think it was effective, and if we've done it once, would it happen farther south?
That's.
Anybody remember what the speed limit was? Because it was reduced temporarily.
It was, I don't recall what the speed was, and I think it might have helped a little bit in some areas, or not, I'm not sure, but.
Well, you've got one commissioner that said that South Sewell's two other commissioners that have said that they, we all kind of, we've all been in situations where we violated the speed limit.
Yeah. My opinion, I don't think it's safe no matter what the speed limit is there because people are distracted, and I've seen people veer off the road where people normally would walk. That's my opinion. I just feel it doesn't matter if it's 25, 30, 35. I just feel there's a lot of distracted drivers, and I've seen one time where a car passed a school bus. I mean, just people don't care, and you got selfish people. I've also come out where you see a pickup truck coming out of High Point that's already, by the time it reaches me around that bend, it's already over 50 miles an hour. And, those are just selfish individuals, in my opinion. That's the best way to put it. If somebody needs to do 50 on this road, shame on them. They just don't care about anybody but themselves. And
I think it was 25, but it wasn't the full extent of South Sewell's Point Road. It was like a period before the construction and a period after, but I could be wrong. That is my best recollection.
we'll look into it. Vice Mayor.
I want to make a suggestion to staff that we take all the priorities. I'll wait till he stops talking.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to make a suggestion to staff that we take all the priorities and we compile them all
Priority, can you,
from all the.
you're talking about the
Yeah,
traffic
no,
stuff?
no, the priority.
No,
Oh, the from
Yeah.
all of yours? Okay, and I'll put it all on one sheet.
okay, and see what you come up with.
Okay.
And then take the residential priorities, put them in a separate list, and see if we can match them later on in a workshop. And that should give us some kind of an idea on what we want to do as far as priorities are concerned.
Idea.
That's it.
All right, I'm going to make excuse me, anybody making a motion?
I move we adjourn.
I second it.
Thank you for coming.